Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us at Empowerment Liberation Cathedral for our Word Wednesday service. We're so excited to bring to you this Women's History Month, some dynamic, phenomenal women. So you don't want to miss tonight. Again, if you will, hit like, if you will, hit share, if you will start a watch party because you want to hear from our special guest on tonight. Again, I don't want to sound like some of the folks on the social media platforms, but I'm going to say, get on in here, get on in here, get on in here, come on in here. So if you will hit like, if you will hit share, and if you will create a watch party. We're going to give you a few moments to do that. But welcome again to Empowerment Liberation Cathedral, better known as ELC. This is our Word Wednesday. And for Women's History Month, we are bringing you some phenomenal women, women who are making history, women who are history, and women who are going to tell you about their journey and some of the things that they are doing on today. So I need you to get all of your friends, get everybody connected to you, get anybody you know. Somebody send out a text message, a mass text message, and say, hey, I need everybody to sign on because ELC is bringing on another phenomenal woman on tonight. And so I need you all to get in here and hear from our guest on tonight. Again, welcome to Empowerment Liberation Cathedral. This is our Word Wednesday for Women's History Month. And so we're excited to be able to bring some special folks to you. I need, again, I'm looking at the number of who's on. I need, again, for people to share. I need for people to create a watch party. And I need for everyone who is able to hit like. Okay. And I need to be able to share it myself. So at this time, I'm going to ask if you will welcome with me a dynamic, phenomenal legend to the screen. We have tonight, we have none other than the human rights lecturer, businesswoman, pastor, past president of many organizations. We have none other than the Reverend Dr. Gail Anderson Holness, and we have Deacon Sylvester Stokes, who is with these ladies on tonight. All right, so welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so excited to have you with us, Dr. Holness. We are so excited to have you with us. We know that you've got a lot to share with us on tonight. And look, I must say something first about this shirt that you have on. For those of you who don't know, this is the best his HBCU. I think I'm gonna say it that way. HU, and somebody ought to say, All right, so that's the real HU. Anybody know about the real HU? So Howard University is the real HU, and so glad that Dr. Holness is representing on tonight. And so Dr. Holness, you can take yours off of mute. We do want to ask you some questions and find out some things about you on tonight. So welcome, welcome, welcome to you. Again, I think since you off of mute, let me say HU. I want to hear you say you know.
And I said it already. I didn't realize I was on mute. You know.
You know.
You know.
All right. There it is. There it is. There it is. And we have Minister Eliana Bullock with us also. So, Dr. Holness, I want to start with your childhood. I think it's always important to go back there. What is it that you desire to be when you grew up as a young child growing up in the Carolinas?
I wanted to be a lawyer. And
awesome.
And an activist. And growing up in Columbia, South Carolina really gave me, well, first I want to say thank you, Bishop Allison Abrams and the Empowerment Liberation Cathedral, one of my homes. I want to thank you for inviting me tonight. And before I really get into the question, I love you. I love the community. I'm always there, and feeling when I'm there, I feel a part of who you are. And I'm
Thank
grateful that you've invited me to be a part of this Women's History Month. But
thank
your question, other than HU,
you. No,
all right then. Well,
I don't want them to hear that though. They forget that.
I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. I was born, and I'm not ashamed of my age. And they always say women shouldn't tell their age, but you know, if you look as good as I do, you don't mind. Hallelujah. It's a poor frog that doesn't blow its own horn. Um, I was born in 1956. I'm 64 years old. Will be 65. And if I didn't tell the truth, somebody will say so about my prior statement. But I'm 60. I'll be 65 years old this year. I walk 4 miles every morning.
Come on now.
Okay. And I do the hill at 13th Street over by Cardozo. Okay. Twice at least. So, but I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm a grits girl, a girl raised in the South, daughter of the soil of the South. And as a result of being born in 1956, the youngest of 10 children, with a mother and a father who were in the house until my father died at 86. And they were a teenage couple. And so I grew up during that era, in the midst of and at the height of, as a little girl, of the civil rights movement. Segregation was very prevalent. I was one of the little girls that went to an elementary school that we desegregated in the community, a formerly Caucasian community that my family moved into the neighborhood back in the 60s. We could walk to the neighborhood school, which was taught by Caucasians, and the children that went there were Caucasians. And so I learned at a very early age what disparate treatment was to a child, because they taught them. And I wrote an article in the South Carolina paper about a month or so ago about the January 6th insurrection. And I wrote, the title of the article was, they were simply exercising their white privilege. But and what triggered me with that was my childhood, because I saw them teach them that they were privileged, particularly when my brothers, who are twins, and I and another Black kid, the four of us were there. And they were all, both of them, the three of them were in the grade above me. But when you were there, they were in the front of the line. You were never picked for anything. I don't care how smart you were or could have been. You were never as smart. You were never prettier. You were this, that, and the other. So I learned very easily. The teacher told us one time, my twin brothers and I, go back to where you came from. And if you know me now, I'm not very different than I was as a child. That's probably why I am the way I am now. And the teacher said, go back to where you come from. And I said, I came from around the corner. I walked to school. But she was making reference to Africa.
Yeah.
And they told my brothers the afros were out, and my brothers looked like me, and the afros were out. And, my mother took care of us. She took care of her 10 children, and all 10 of her children went to college. But at any rate, they told my brothers that they needed to take up money to get their hair cut, because obviously their parents could not afford a haircut. Well, my mother got there to the school before my father got there. It's nothing like having parents who support you in who you are.
Yes.
And so when my mother got there, they let my mother in. And she was walking through. They were being so nice to her. And when my father got there, my mother said, "That's my husband. And I'm Gail's mother." They thought she was one of them. And she is kind of, you know what I mean?
We
Truth,
got it.
you got it. You
Yeah,
got it.
yes.
And so I think my activism started then. And when I was in middle school, the kids, my sister, older sister, one of the older ones, was a part of the desegregation of the middle school.
Yeah.
So when we left elementary, we went to middle school. And in the middle school, they had already, there were more Americans of African descent there. But the majority of them that they were coming there did not have a bus. And so they had to get there the best way they could. So me being the activist that I was in the 7th grade, tried to bring attention to them getting a bus. And we were all out there. It was like about to be a race war. We were on this side of the maybe field, and a bunch of them were on the other side of the field like that, facing each other. So this was during the time of H. Rap Brown and Angela Davis, who was my hero. And I told them, "Well, y'all, you give the kids a bus." I didn't need a bus. My dad owned a car dealership. We got driven to school every day. And Senator I.D. Quincy Newman, who became the first Black senator since Reconstruction in Columbia, son was a part of that group, who eventually, and I'll say this publicly, whose name was Morris at the time.
Yes.
He's now Emily. So they took us to school. So I didn't need a bus. So I told him, I said, "Look, we'll burn this place down if you don't give these kids a bus." I was slap down, burn, baby, burn, burn, baby, burn was out. And so all the kids acted like they were behind me. So we're walking ahead. And I'm telling you, I'm in the 7th grade. I didn't live in the neighborhood that they lived in. I wasn't a part of, they sometimes we're not in the same culture, even though we have the same color.
Yes.
Same race. So they were behind me. And the principal, I remember the principal saying, it wasn't that many, it was enough though, because there wasn't that many of us there. The principal said, "I'm going to call all of your parents." I said, "Call mine." 7th grade. If I'm small now, I was a whole lot smaller then.
Yes.
2 pounds, 3 feet. So I looked back and all the kids had left. So the principal took me in the office, called my parents. And when my parents got there, my dad was a deputy sheriff, so he had guns on, with a license. And my mother was there. And they didn't want me in the meeting with them. My mother said, "Well, if you're going to talk about her, she needs to be in the meeting." So we got in the meeting and they were telling my mother all that had happened. My mother said, "Well, you know what?" And this made me just love my mother as this woman in my life history. She said, "Well, it sounds like you need to quit your job and let Gail run the school."
Wow.
So that's where, it sounded like a long story, but you have to give the historical background so that people will know where you are and what you're a part of. Because the teachers in my school at that time, and I was in the 3rd grade.
Yes.
And this was like 61, 62. And the teachers in my neighborhood lived in, the teachers at my elementary school, the Caucasian school, but I'll call it, lived in my neighborhood. But they never spoke. They spoke to you in school.
Yes.
But if you were out at a grocery store, at another store that they allowed Americans of African descent to come in,
Yes.
they acted like they didn't know you.
Wow.
So we're
Wow.
living Black History Month, and while we're in Women's History Month, we've been silent for women have just been treated disparately, as well as men. But for those of us who don't mind using our voices, are generally the ones who are looked down upon, and others benefit from our activism.
Right. And I want to say, Usually when you find a person that is very passionate about human rights and determined to make a difference and to change the policies and laws, that's because of some experience they've had in the past. And so I thank you for sharing that personal experience. I'm sure there were many, because I like that grits term too that you gave, because I grew up in the red clay of Alabama.
Oh,
And so
wow.
when you talk about grits, I'm like, wait a minute, I love grits, but
I don't like grits. I don't, I mean, I eat grits. I've been eating grits in the last maybe 2 years
yeah,
because, but I grew up as a kid not liking grits, oatmeal.
okay.
The,
Oatmeal, look, we ate oatmeal too. But anyway, but let me move on. Let me move on. I don't want to get stuck there. So, it was wonderful to see all the things that you've been able to accomplish since you have graduated, I believe, from Johnson Smith. Johnson C. Smith?
no,
Uh, which
Clark Atlanta University. I graduated actually from Clark College.
Clark College? I remember when it was
Clark
Clark
College
College.
at the time, and then
Yes.
became Clark Atlanta University.
Okay. And
That
then also you went to Howard's Law School, which, yes, you're representing. And so one of the things I saw was very interesting in what I was looking at is that you worked on the Atlanta case. You were the youngest member of the defense team in the trial of the state of Georgia versus Wayne Williams in 1981, known as the Atlanta murdered children's case. And so now talk to us about that, because I remember in Alabama, Atlanta is like 2 hours away. So everybody in Birmingham Atlanta is like our neighbor, like DC and Maryland. And so we were very engaged in watching that case. So how did you get I guess on that case right out of Howard Law School? And how did that case change you maybe?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I not only finished Howard's law school, I also finished Howard School of Divinity as well. So I'm a double
Yeah.
Howard.
Yeah.
Well, when I was in law school, I worked with Mary Welcome, who was the lead attorney on the case. She's like family to me. We've been knowing each other forever. We're like family. And when I was in law school, one summer I interned with her and worked at her law firm because she went in private practice after being the city solicitor for the city of Atlanta. And when I graduated from law school, she called me. And ironically, I was at LaTanya Jackson and Sam Jackson's house in New York before they became famous. I was visiting them. And that morning, I went to the newsstand and got the New York Post and New York paper that said Atlanta monster seized. Took it back to Sam and LaTanya. I was like, wow, they found the person in Atlanta that they believe committed these murders. Well, maybe about 10 or 15 minutes later, I get a call from Mary saying, will you come to Atlanta and help me with this case? I hadn't even taken the bar yet. I was just out of law school in May. And she called me in June, maybe May. And I told her, no, I can't do that. I'm on my way to California. I was in New York at the time. I'm 24 years old, single, straight out of undergrad to law and, just getting out,
Right.
getting prepared to take the bar. So I said, no, I'm going to California. My brother Ronald was getting married. My whole family's going to California.
Yes.
So she said, okay. So while I was out in California at my brother's wedding, she called again. She said, I'm going to be on Nightline or something like that.
Yeah.
One of
Mhm.
things. She said, I'm going to be on Nightline tonight. And I really want you to come down and help me. I had all kind of offers to go in the Army and the JAG Corps because I worked as an intern at the Pentagon the year before I worked for her. So I had an opportunity to do that. I had an opportunity to clerk for a judge. I had an opportunity to, yeah, there were opportunities available.
Yes.
And I really didn't want to do it. And I eventually told her yes. So I went to, and that's how I got there. After I
Wow.
came back from my brother's funeral, because I was working, I was at that point, interning at the Office of Human Rights here in DC under Anita Shelton, who
Oh,
was
wow.
politically active. I've been knowing Anita
Yeah.
Shelton since I was in law school. I was her legal person when I was in law school, legal intern.
Yes.
And she'd offered me to come on full time. And I turned everything down to go to Atlanta as a 24-year-old. And I'd gone to undergrad in Atlanta, so I knew a lot of people in Atlanta. You go to a HBCU, you got friends for life, or at
Yeah.
least know people for life, whether or not they're
Right.
your friends. You gather at homecomings and all that those kinds of enjoyable things that we do.
Yeah.
And so I went down. And for me, as a 24-year-old, it was a life-changing experience, to say the least, because it was the most notorious legal case globally at the time. An
Yes.
American of African descent, my age, because Wayne was 24 years old, and an American of African descent accused of a serial murder of other young African American males under the age of 16. And so that's amazing. I mean, that's all over the world. And not only that, I if you look at some of the old newsreels, I was the spokesperson with the media for the defense team. And it started out with Mary and I, and then she brought in another attorney, Tony Axum. Then these other people came in that told us that they were actually coming through town and they wanted to work on the case. Eventually they became the lead. And, you know, while Mary became the lead, they were engaged in it as well. It's
Wow.
an experience.
Yeah.
We have
That
witnessed, everybody came through, all the Dick Gregory, Racehorse Haynes, all the lawyers that on both sides of the spectrum. If you go back and look at old reels, every lawyer that wanted something out of this case,
yeah.
if not notoriety for themselves and more business. So
Wow. That was wonderful to read that you uh were there, you were working, and you had a footprint on that case.
well, if you go on HBO, HBO has that is showing footage, and you'll see me when I was 24 years old. I look the same.
You look the same.
Just a little more hair.
Yes, yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, before I move to my question about the DC Democratic Women's, um, let me ask Deacon Ronnie, Deacon Sylvester, or Minister Eliana if they want to ask a question of Reverend Dr. E. Gail Anderson Holness on tonight.
I just want to make a comment. Having been with you during an election, watching it, being disappointed at the end, having seen you give words in our sanctuary, having experienced you from afar, when I say you are the brightest Black light, let me tell you, you are absolutely phenomenal. And I so appreciate just your presence. Like it's unapologetic and you take up your space in this world. And I think for our Black and brown bodies and the way we have been treated so many years, to see a Black and brown body take up their space, it's a blessing. So I just thank you for taking up your space in this world and showing a lot of us how it's done. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Holness, Eliana kind of took something what I was going to say, because I remember we were with you during the unfortunate election that year down in DC. But my question is, I know, right, Bishop Boo, but nonetheless, look where we are now, right? But my question is, as growing up in the South as a child, and how much you had to deal with and all the segregation and so on and so forth. Were you at any time afraid of the outcome or if anything could potentially happen to you or your family? Did any of that ever strike you, or you just was like, it is what it is, I'm gonna do what I need to do?
It didn't strike me when I was younger.
Okay.
Because, you know, that youthful spirit, that spirit, I have nothing to lose kind of spirit, that spirit when you don't have to pay bills or have a job or somebody to fire you from your job, you can say what you want to say and do what you want to say. And you got backup like the parents I had. So that is one aspect of it. But when you, I'm trying to figure out how to get to that point, but I got fearful when I went back in 1996. And I was there with Bishop John Hurst Adams as a pastor at Benedict College, working as an administrator. And we were instrumental in doing activism work to have the Confederate flag taken down from the dome of the Capitol. And so I dealt with that for a couple of years. And my daughter was there and she was in school, and in a good school with the fence around it, private school. And we got threats. They said they would kill my daughter. They knew where she went to school. It didn't matter whether there was a fence there. They threw bottles through my church window in Lexington, which is where that person is from that killed all of those individuals down in Charleston at Mother Emanuel. And the FBI was at my, South Carolina police were at my church, and they drove through my churchyard with trucks that had guns in the back window. And there was only one way in and one way out. This pretty spacious, you know, area where the church was. It had a graveyard in the back and everything. But by the time we heard the rumbling, we were inside because they were listening to the tape on the recording where they had threatened to do me, threatened to do my daughter. They knew where I lived and all of this. And so by the time the law enforcement persons got outside, they were driving out of the parking lot because they probably noticed my car because of course I had personalized tags. I had that black Benz at the time. And the black cars, the black law enforcement vehicles were there. There were two of them. But by the time they got outside, they drew guns. The law enforcement people did, and the other people just drove out of the churchyard. Now, of course, I would say that they were extreme racist.
Yes.
They had Confederate flags in their windows and guns. And to someone from the South seeing that, having heard stories about it, but it didn't impact my life. But when they threatened to kill my daughter, threatened to kill me, they knew, you know, gave me all these threats. That's when I came back to DC.
Wow.
So I left DC to go home. My parents were getting older, retired, And I'm glad I went back because my daughter got to know her grandparents, her maternal grandparents as well, because she was going to Jamaica to visit her grandparents down in Jamaica. So she got both worlds, but we lived next door to my parents.
Awesome.
And when they did that, I was like, look, I'm out here fighting for a cause based on symbolism. I'm not trying to be a martyr to that end and to that extent. I had a daughter to live for.
Absolutely.
And whoever said it, Betty Davis or Joan Crawford, whatever movie they were in, they said, I want to live.
Yeah.
They are serious. Extreme racists and extreme cowards are deadly.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so I felt fearful, but you know, we were attempting to get that flag down. Then 2 weeks before he was killed, I was with the pastor, Senator Pinckney, in Columbia, South Carolina, 15 years later still, but I was there for a meeting. You were there, weren't you?
Yes, I was there.
That was like 2 weeks before they got killed.
Sure was.
So after they get killed, we come back to DC because we were at a meeting, and I'm on my way to Atlanta to trade cars with my daughter to give her the black car so I could get my red car back, because she was getting a family going on and she didn't need a two-seater. Well, on the way down, something happened with my key to my car. I got gas, and something happened with the key. And you know, with those kind of cars, certain kind of cars, if the key doesn't work, you can't open anything, the doors, because it's something. So they told me they had to take me to the dealership. We were on the way to the dealership. I break my ankle. Wasn't going to Columbia. I break my ankle. Well, I had to end up going to Columbia because Charlotte is only an hour from Columbia versus going to Atlanta, and I couldn't move. You know, they had to carry me there because my ankle was it was like this. I get there, they took me to the hospital. They couldn't operate because my leg was too swollen. And I was convinced I was still going to Atlanta because my sister was there and she was going to go to Atlanta too the next day, in a couple of days. So came out the next day, they said they were taking the flag down. He had just been killed that day. So I had crutches. I got pictures. I had crutches on and everything. And my sister was there visiting my mother from Baltimore. So I asked she and her husband if they would take me down to the Capitol so that I could be there when they took the flag down. My sister said, no, they're never going to let you go. This is my big sister who graduated from Morgan State, not Howard. But said, no, they're not going to let you down there. I said, well, just take me anyway. And she'll verify my story. That, you know, everybody got to verify. My sister will verify my story. I'll give you her name, number, and email. So she just said, okay, I'm just going to go on and take you. They're not going to let us through. When we got down to Main Street, one of the police officers recognized me. It was like they parted the waters for Moses and took me not only, where's that picture? Hold on. Took me straight to Nikki Haley's office, who was the governor of, see the crutches?
Yes. I remember that.
Took me straight to her office. And then after they brought the flag down, CNN caught me as they're walking past me with the flag. My brother took these pictures from TV. God has a way, because I would never have wanted to, number one, break my ankle. But the fact that 15 years later, after we had gone through this, after they threatened to kill me and my kid, I'm there.
Wow.
It says family and friends, but this was the only frame I had.
Wow. So God would have it for you to be there.
Yeah.
As we watched it all on television.
There, I was right there. It says, breaking news, historic moment as flag comes down.
Yes.
State House, Columbia.
Yes. Yes. We watched.
And that's us, three governors. He gave me the Order of the Palmetto. That's Jim Hodges. This was the presiding elder of the AME Church, Nikki Haley, me with the crutches, and the other governor.
Wow. Wow. That is so powerful to just see that and know that, God allowed you to see the fruit of your labor, because somebody had to plant a seed way ahead of time that needed to come down. So we're so thankful that you got a chance to see that. And by any means necessary, that's what it sounded like to me. was necessary for you to have that broke ankle. Maybe not, but but you
Probably
got
was because I was going to Atlanta to see my daughter. I was not going to Columbia. I was on 85, and Columbia is off 95.
yes, yes.
Yeah, they
Wow.
over the seven, it was a roundabout, but the Lord's name be praised.
So I want to ask you about your work. I know you've done work with the NAACP for many years, as well as the DC Democratic Women's Club. So tell us about that work and how that work drives you, how that work fuels you. You are the past president, I believe, of the DC Democratic Women's Club. And so talk to us some about that and, what's happening with those organizations in this time.
Sure. Well, with the NAACP, I'll take that one first. I was the president of the local youth chapter for the NAACP at like 12 or 13. I became the state youth president. We were winning all the national awards because we were working. We had a cause. We were doing civil rights. And this was in the 60s, in the late 60s.
Yes.
Became the state youth president for the NAACP of South Carolina. Then I was elected at age 16 to the National Board of Directors for the NAACP when Roy Wilkins was the
Wow.
executive director. Margaret Bush
Wow.
wasn't even the chairman of the board. Kelly Alexander out of North Carolina, Kelly Alexander Sr. Was the chairman of the board. But I was on the board long enough to be there when Margaret Bush Wilson became the first female chairperson of the board. And when I went to law school, I was still on the National Board of Directors. So I was elected as I graduated from high school. And during my years at Clark College, I was serving on the National Board of Directors, which meant I was having to go to board meetings. I was learning from people like Mordecai Johnson,
Wow.
Spotswood, all of Ben Hooks.
Yes, I remember him.
I could just go down the row and Montague Cobb, Kivy Kaplan, that streets are named after here in Washington, D.C. Vernon Jordan and those people weren't around during this time. Actually, they came just a little bit later because Roy and those people, Bayard Rustin came to my graduation from Clark.
Oh, I think I'm gonna pass out. I think I might just pass out. Bayard Rustin
I
came.
graduated from Clark College. Bayard Rustin came to my graduation.
Wow.
Because he said he appreciated me so much. People would say I've always probably had somewhat of a mouth, but it's with critical thinking.
They might say.
I'm just thinking voice. I'm not talking loud, saying nothing. I'm talking in a even keel voice about the issues and concerns of our people. And people that are less fortunate, who have no voice, who know, even if they have a voice, no one would listen.
Yes.
I could have the same story about that someone else has, and their story would be highlighted and mine would be ignored. So to have a voice and to be able to participate in the process was absolutely an experience with the NAACP. And then when I was 19, I was chosen as a national youth leader by the President of the United States because I had worked under Jimmy Carter's administration as an intern in the governor's office when Jimmy Carter was governor of Georgia when I was a student at Clark. And a couple of years right after that, I was elected as a national youth leader for the United States and went to 3 countries. And then they had to reroute me back because I must have said something over there. Roy Wilkins called my parents and said, "You cannot go back. Send her this way."
Right.
I ended up going through Venezuela to come back. And I mean, maybe I shouldn't be telling this story, but it's the truth. They said you couldn't go back to the White House for the briefing. So, but it was because of something that I said about the mistreatment of people in the islands, because we went to Nassau, we went to the Bahamas, we went to Trinidad, Tobago, and we went to Colombia, South America. So there was impoverishment there. People were hungry, they were beggars, worse than I'd ever seen in America, even to today. You talk about poverty. The people that are poverty stricken in America look like they live in large and in charge compared to what some of these countries that are real poverty stricken. So I got to travel, but then I was also on the National Youth Work Committee for the NAACP. And when I was 19, I call him Uncle Roy Wilkins, and Margaret Bush Wilson got together and said that I should go to New York to work at 1790 Broadway. For that summer, my junior year in college, I worked at the NAACP office when it was at 1790 Broadway, and Roy Wilkins was the executive director. I walk into his office like we're having this conversation. I called him Uncle Roy. And he taught me some of the greatest lessons. You know, I was a board member, so I had a secretary, even though I was, you know, in college, I was still a board member. And they made provisions for me because board members weren't supposed to work and get paid from the organization because, you know, it's like perhaps not a good fit, but they made it happen because they wanted me to learn the organization. And one day I was calling the secretary in to make copies. Uncle Roy said, learn how to make copies yourself. He called me in his office. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm calling her in to make copies. And I, you know, of course, I was very respectful. And he, you know, to elders in any case, and especially when I love them, and especially when you love them. And he said, in an organization, you need to, as the leader of an organization, you need to know how to do everything in the organization. He said, what if she weren't here today? What if she were out sick? How would you get your copies made? You wouldn't know how to make them because you never made a copy. He said, it's like painting. And I use this example all the time. He said, you can read a book about how to paint all day long, but until you pick up a paintbrush, you don't know how to paint.
Yes. Yes. Powerful image. I love that image.
So from the NAACP perspective, I was still a part of the movement. I was the only young lady on the board of directors for the NAACP at the time, because, you know, they select one youth to be on the board from different regions. And I won regionally and from the South, you know, South Carolina, Georgia, and I think maybe Florida. And I ran against the chairman of the board's son and won.
Wow. Wow. That's
and pulled it off. I was shocked that I won, you know, but you had to talk. You had to say something. So I don't know what I said that, you know, made me win, but the Lord's name be praised. It was a great learning experience. I learned a lot about leadership from the NAACP. And the other thing I learned, aside from learning loyalty from my table at my family home with 12 people at the table, my mother, my father, and my 9 brothers and sisters, 10 of us in the mother and father house, learning a lot at the table. I also learned loyalty in an organization.
Yes.
The NAACP. I learned loyalty from Roy Wilkins. I learned loyalty from Ben Hooks. I learned loyalty from Margaret Bush Wilson. I used to go to St. Louis just to visit her. And I was one of those people who liked to sit at their feet because I liked what the wisdom and the knowledge that they gave me, and to be able to have a discerning spirit. And they appreciated my voice.
Yes.
Because, you know, while I was listening to them, they also listened to me.
Yes. And can I ask a question there? Because I think that is so important, because it seems to me that that's not really happening today. I think I was on the tail end of where you would go and sit at the feet of many of these people, because I had the wonderful privilege of serving as vice president of NAACP in Southfield, Oakland chapter in Michigan. And so, you know, people wanted to pour into you. They wanted to help, you get to the next level, but, you know, you have to be willing to go and sit, and you have to be willing to observe. You got to be willing to go. And, you know, it seems like that's not happening today.
it's definitely, I don't think, and you, I think you're right on point. I was having that conversation with my daughter about how we could just make a phone call, pick up the phone and call someone and they would help you.
Yes.
They would do something to encourage or say something to encourage you. But we've become so self-centered with this reality lives that are non-reality lives that people are living. They're putting all kinds of images. Our lives are becoming image driven.
Yes.
You see these young women who have images of themselves getting on private planes and being in different islands and different places with all the fabulous this and the fabulous that, and they live in an apartment. I'm just saying, I was taught that, you own property. My father gave me property when I was younger because he remembered the grandfather clause that if you didn't own property, if your grandfather didn't own property, you couldn't vote.
Couldn't vote. Yes.
And so property for us, we are such consumers
Yes.
as people. And that's not what the question was. So I guess I'm deviating from the second question of being engaged with the DC Democratic Women's Club.
Yeah.
Actually, if the truth would be told, I was integrally involved with one of the women who was several of the founders of the organization. And they sort of sent for me.
Okay.
And I became the president for the time allotted to be president. The membership increased. We had programs. I think you may have come to some of our programs.
Yeah.
I became engaged with other aspects of the Democratic Party, and now I serve. And I was also had been an elected advisory neighborhood commissioner, aside from the other elections that we had that were a no-go. But I was elected an advisory neighborhood commissioner for Ward 1 in DC, and also served as the chair of the advisory neighborhood commissioner. And that's when I stepped down from that to run for that other office.
Okay.
That we were not successful, but the Lord's name be praised. And so I was engaged to that end, and being a part of that and engaging women to run for office. And as a woman who's involved in politics, and I'm going to say it during this Women's History Month, and the Bible says, do not muzzle the oxen. So I'm going to be an oxen and don't muzzle it. But in a lot of instances, as a female pastor, as a female lawyer, I really thought God had a sense of humor with me to call me in two male-dominated professions.
Yes. Yes.
Two major male-dominated, but I had to have the degrees. I had to have everything to get through the door because I really didn't like school, and I seemed like I've been in school all my life. But through it all, and I think we're about to close in a minute or two.
Well, if you Baptist, you got a few more minutes to close.
Okay, so I'm gonna go and do that because I was ordained Baptist as well, and my
Amen.
was a Baptist pastor. My brother was a Baptist pastor in Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, in Benton Harbor, over with
yes.
parents. Yeah,
Yes.
over with best parents. And I will say this lovingly, and I have 5 blood sisters, 6 girls and 4 boys. And they are my best friends. They tell me when I'm wrong. They tell me when I'm right. To them, I'm their baby sister. And they can say and do anything to me they want, and I'm still gonna love them. But they also understand that to the world, I'm Dr. Gail Anderson Holness. And so they respect me. They support my ministry. They have supported my business ventures. They've supported my life. But in all of the professions that I've ever been a part of, my worst nemesis have been other women.
Come on and talk now. You know I can talk about it, but go ahead and talk. Tell the truth.
And I love my sisters. I love my sisters. I love my sisters dearly. But I've had to tell many a sister, as a pastor, for leadership in the church of other women that were leaders in the church when I got there, that if I were a man, you wouldn't treat me like this. I'm just saying what it is. It's Women's History Month.
Go ahead and say it. It's Women's History Month.
That's right.
Talk about it.
And we're celebrating. But this is also a month for sisters to begin to love each other more. And when one sister goes up, we ought to shout with her.
Yes, yes,
If a
yes.
sister is sad, we ought to be sad with her.
Yes.
We ought not be sisters where we feel like we can't tell our joy because people will be envious, jealous, and cause strife in our lives. We don't need to be like the crabs, and I'm about to preach up in here.
Come on, I feel it. I feel it. Come on now.
That's all right. Keep going.
Yes. Talk, Dr. Holness.
Yeah, we become like crabs in the barrel to some extent. And you know what happens when crabs are in the barrel? If you try to pull one crab down, where does that crab fall? On the crab that's trying to pull them down. So
That's
you're
right.
not going to get up. But if you help that crab
Yeah.
get the ladder,
Come
that
on now.
crab might reach back and give you a hand and pull your crab.
Come on now.
Yeah. Yes.
But we're at the point where we try to be like the men that we said we didn't want them to be to us.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk about it.
We don't call a sister's name because she ain't the one. We don't want her to rise. We don't want her to excel. Don't call her name. Don't invite her to workshops. Don't invite her with her smart self to be on panels. Don't invite her because she's cute.
Mm.
Don't invite her because she light-skinned or dark-skinned or she wear a weave, a wig, or got her hair braided. Don't invite her for whatever idiosyncrasies we have. It ought not matter. We represent the scale. We are we the first rainbow coalition.
Come on now.
Yes.
We ought to, as much as we've been through, as much as our ancestors have been through, women, Black women, women enslaved, women of Americans of African descent having been raped.
Yes.
And forced to do things against their will. We ought to know what that pain is. And we're still going through that. We were also the last hired and the first fired.
Yes.
And then when we got there, there were women who had to work and mop people's floors and so that their kids could go to college and other women looked down on them. The ones who had already begun to rise.
My God.
There are many who were already risen and already up there that I grew up with a family that never looked down we didn't know nothing about being a PK and that was so special. We didn't think where we lived was so special because it was like Solomon. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But my mother always taught us that we were not better than anyone and no one was better than us.
That's right.
Yes.
We were swimmers. My mother's kids swam at this place called Drew Park. I guess that was like my mother's babysitter. But the Anderson, we were the swim team and who was a part of that swim team? Charles Bolden, the former president, director of NASA, the first Black director of NASA from Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow.
Charles's brother Warren. Bunch of us down the Hill family, we were family growing up, even no matter where we lived or no matter who we were. You just didn't, and there were people who looked down on other people. Even though my mother had 10 children, whether or not they would look down on her, my mother was that kind of woman that she walked like she had a gold mine. And she might not have had a pot, nor a window, or anything like unto that. But her children never had a cold.
Mm.
Her children were never dirty.
Yeah.
Her children were educated.
Yes.
Children, even to this day,
Yes.
my almost 96-year-old mother is that woman in the book of Proverbs.
Yes. I love that.
A virtuous woman. And my brothers and my sisters and I always talk about my parents. And when my father died, he died in my mother's arms. And right before he died, he said, because they called each other Mr. and Miss Anderson, he said, Miss Anderson, give me a kiss. And my mother gave him a kiss. I was in Paris, and my other brothers and sisters were like in Orlando with their grandchildren. Allie and I were in Paris. And said my mother gave him a kiss, and my nephew was there. So my mother, there was a verification that it really happened like that. And he died.
Wow.
Who would have thought it?
Wow.
Who would have thought it? But you know, afterwards I said, Mommy, you can't kiss me no more.
Wow. Well, you have truly brought that around because I, as a woman in ministry, experienced that so many times when women would rise to gain some of the larger churches, they did not then want to invite other sister preachers to come and preach in their pulpit, nor would they put you on some of the other programs that they were doing. And so I, being a younger preacher, I just thought it was something wrong with me. I said, well, what is with that? You know? And also
We're
when
young
you,
and cute.
yeah, and you know, but the men would invite me, but I wanted to go to my sister's church to
Yep.
celebrate her and what God had done for her. And it seemed like the sisters never would invite me to preach at their church. And so the only way I got to where I was because the men supported, the men lifted me up and brought me to their churches and put me on their programs. But I was always hurt to some degree that the sister girl that I was rallying behind the scenes, wanted to see her get the church, wanted to see her be successful, would not invite me.
Yep, I understand that. But then not only did you have to deal with the sister girl, you had to deal with the wives of the pastors that invited you to.
Now that's a whole nother story too, Doc. You wait, we got to stay out here with you about
That's a whole nother hour.
That's
That's a whole nother hour.
I just opened Dora's box.
That's
Ooh.
right.
Can of worms.
Look, you know,
I can't imagine. I can't begin to tell you.
and you can't look. Don't come and don't ask me to come and looking scrubby and not looking cute just because your wife don't like it.
Let me
I'm
tell
gonna
you,
come in here and be me.
I might be a girl from the South. Okay. But I'm a girl kind of, because I've been coming to DC since I was like 5 years old. My mother's sister lived here. This was my second home. I always want, don't come for me.
You better.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Come for me, because if you come for me, I'm going to leave you alone. I'm not going to, because Allison, Bishop knows me. That's my personal friend.
Yeah.
You know,
And
she
I
might be
love
your
you.
bishop. Like with my brothers and sisters, I'm Gail, but to the world, I'm Dr. Holness. She might be your bishop, but to me, that's Allison.
Yes.
You don't do that. You don't come for people. I'll leave you alone. I'm not going to bother you. But don't think if you come for me,
Come on now.
that I'm not going to respond. Because not responding in some instances is acquiescing.
Yes.
And allowing them to do it again. It's like a bully.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah.
If a bully keep on pushing you and you go back at a bully, one time when you get some courage, after that bully been bullying you for years,
Yes.
and been pushing you around, you push that bully back one time, it's done. It's done. It's not to comfort you anymore because you're going to retaliate. We are from people, those women, our ancestors, that were raped, or Women's History Month, those women that were raped by those slavers, as they are called, those women that jumped overboard because they said before they would be a slave, they would be buried in their grave. Those women who were put in the room for the unruly women at the door of no return in Ghana. You know where I'm talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
Those women.
Yeah.
Those are my ancestors.
Absolutely.
That's why I am the way that I am, because of the way they were.
Yes, yes.
It's in my spirit. It's in my
DNA.
It's in my it's in my DNA.
Come on now.
And so I pray that it's in my daughter's DNA. I believe that it is. And so I am grateful. I have a daughter who is in ministry, Reverend Gail, Holness, Rowland. Bishop Abrams and her wife were at the wedding, been a part of her life for a very long time. And she's married to Thomas Rowland, and they have given me 2 beautiful grandchildren. And the Lord has blessed in that regard. So I want to be able to pass. Tonight, I had Bible study. Jesus had 12 disciples, and they told Moses he needed some help, so he had Aaron. The Lord has given me a daughter.
Amen.
Yeah.
I am well pleased.
Yeah.
She did Bible study. She is
All right now.
Howard School of Divinity.
Praise God.
Undergrad at Trinity University here in DC, and is a good person, a millennial who is just like, has as much of a constructive, she has constructive and vigorous conversations. And she has a voice.
Yes, she does.
She won't let me not let her have a voice. But that's how we have to train each other. We've got to, the Bible says, train up a child.
Train up a child.
In a way that they go.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of giving back. And that's the kind of giving back that I've given to sisters. You know, when sisters call me and say they need something, if I'm a sister, I need to tell them, yeah, I'm there for you.
Right, right. And you know, it's a wonderful testimony to the ancestors and to all of the women who you know, stood in strength and stood in solidarity with other sisters to say we're going to make a difference, and who poured into others and were not selfish with their knowledge, not selfish with their love, not selfish with their wisdom. And you know, we have to do that. And I work to do that at my church. One of the reasons, Dr. Holness, that I work so hard to pour to other people, because I didn't have a woman to pour into me. And so I don't want to be that type of leader, and nor do I want to be that type of businesswoman, because I had a friend who was a businesswoman who seemed to not want to hire other people, especially people she knew that was in need, you know, and people of color. And you have a business where you can help those who are in need if they have skills. It's not like people around her didn't have skill sets, but there was something about she didn't want folks working for her business. And I think if you have a business where you can bring somebody else up, train them, and you know, help them to live, because that's what people do when they work, then that's what we should do as women business leaders and entrepreneurs on today.
Absolutely.
So I just really appreciate what you said, but I don't want to overlook Deacon Sylvester, the man who joined us tonight. I know we've done all this talking, but I don't want to overlook him. So Deacon Sylvester, did you want to jump in before we get off?
I will jump in, and I want to say to Dr. Holness, every time I'm in your presence, I am just in awe, because the truth that comes from your mouth, in terms of history, in terms of theology, in terms of life, is so real. And I learn more and more about you. There have been several times that we've been in the same setting, but to recognize that back from the 7th grade, you were an activist, and that you've worn many, many hats. And so sometimes you see throughout history and in society, people wear hats, but they're not effective. And what I would tell you is that I appreciate the fact that every single thing that you touched, you spoke into, was for justice, was for equality, was for love, was for God. And so I appreciate that. So as your brother, I know this is Women's History Month. I definitely applaud you and all the women on and all the women that are listening. But I'm just always, as a brother, just so taken back that I don't have to read about you in a book, that I'm sitting here on Zoom listening to it. And that's such an advantage. And so I really pray that people will take the time to listen and to watch this video moving forward, just to get a bit of history, get a little bit of love and some theology from you. So I appreciate the time spent with you, and I thank you.
Thank you, brother. I got 4 brothers. I'm the youngest of 10. So, I always had big brothers, and I always, and my dad, and my mother had 9 brothers. So I'm accustomed to having men in my life, real men.
Absolutely.
The men who love the Lord.
Amen. Amen.
Right. So any last thing you want to share with us? Well, Mr. L or Deacon Ronnie, did y'all want to ask anything else before we give Reverend Dr. E. Gail Anderson Holness the last words?
I just wanted to ask, Doctor, when you say that your nemesis is normally women of color, like how do we work to break that cycle? I know part of it has to do with not loving our own pigment, not loving our own skin and what that represents, or not knowing the value of what it represents. So how do we work through that, especially ministry? Because like the last thing I want to do is try to share the love of God, and I got to deal with your insecurities and all that. You know what I mean? Like, how do we do that?
That's one of those Arsenio Hall's things that make you go, It's that really is like a loaded potato question. Because when you're out there doing for others, you have a tendency to put yourself on the back burner. You've got to learn how to do justice and kindness, because you can't break those cycles of people who don't love themselves. Because the Bible said, love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Love the Lord your God, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Well, I'm one of those people that don't just listen to gospel music. Kendrick Lamar had a song out that said, I love myself. That was one of my theme songs. And so you can't love other people until you love yourself. And that's not selfish. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. Even when you get on the plane, they say, do what? Put the mask on yourself first. And if you're secure in who you are, you will help somebody else. Bishop, if they were secure in who they were, it didn't matter who they invited to preach.
That's right.
It didn't matter. It doesn't matter who they invite to do a workshop.
Yes.
If you're not threatened by if you know what you are secure in who you are,
yes,
you can let anybody come up in your space. Because nobody can take your place. You are who you are. But other people don't, hurt people. And so we've got to get people out of this self-mutilating spirit. Because self-mutilation is self-destruction. And when you're destructing yourself, that impacts other people. You ever go around somebody that always looks sad? And if you're around them long enough, you start looking what? Sad.
That too.
And so we need to make a space and not become them and push them to become like us. God said he'd make us, the word of God said he'd make us fishers of men. But at any rate, that's a whole nother story for another time. But he said he'll make us fishers of men to bring them in. When you catch fish, they have scales on them.
My.
And I used to see my uncles, because my mother's brothers, we called them Indians. They'd scale those fish because they were hunters. And we see them scaling the fish, or my mother scaling the fish that they brought her when they went fishing. Well, we're like fisher people, as those in ministry and as ambassadors of Christ. And whether or not they act the way they do and try to be our worst nemesis, you teach people how to treat you. That's what we ought to know. When you teach people how to treat you.
My God.
The theological perspective is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if you want to be mean to me, expect that I might be mean to you, but because of who I am and because I'm in Christ, I'm going to pray for those who despitefully use and abuse me, those that don't invite me to preach, those that think that I'm uncontrollable, those that when I go preach give me $2 to preach, where somebody else with lesser standing that they like more, that they pay a large sum and tell
Hey,
we a small church.
don't have me go there. Don't have me go there.
Well, it is time, but I am so grateful tonight. I believe you told me to close out, but I want to give a shout out to my 95-year-old, almost 96-year-old mother, Beatrice Jacobs Anderson in Columbia, South Carolina, who's also a grits girl, and who has experienced her own time based on her experience complexion and the complexion of her family. Her father was a pastor, a Baptist pastor, went to Benedict, so there's a lot that goes with a lot of those dynamics of life. At any rate, I give a shout out to her and to all of my 5 sisters, Dolores, Marion, Susan, Vivian, and Charlene, and to my apple of my eye and the mango of my heart.
Yeah.
My daughter, my one egg in my one basket. She's Reverend Allie Gail Anderson Holness Rowland to you. But to me, that's my baby.
Yes.
So I love all of you. Thank you, Bullock brothers, Stokes and Bishop Abrams, for having me here today. It's been a pleasure. And I probably gave too many secrets away.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. E.L. Anderson Holness. We want to say that we love you. We always enjoy having you come to ELC. And, I just appreciate all that you've shared. And look, we just really got into some good stuff. So we have to do a part 2 because you really just got into the good stuff now. So we definitely have to bring you back on and let's talk. Deacon Sylvester, you wanted to say
one question. I have one question. I know that we're over, but in terms of history, we're currently in a historic moment with the pandemic, COVID-19. And so I would like to know, what message are you sending? I guess that's the right way to say it. What message are you giving to all people of color, in terms of their responsibility, in terms of their care, in terms of their health?
That's a good question. For one, this is not Tuskegee. For 2, this is not Sister Lackey from Baltimore.
Yes.
This is a pandemic. And I'm telling everyone to be wise in the decisions that they make for themselves, because you are your best doctor. I was one of those skeptics until last week, because I've always believed that they don't test people like me. There's cream in my coffee, if you can't tell. And so I got a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So do they test people that's got a little bit of this and a little bit of that, or do they just test a certain segment of society? So I was skeptical, and I knew about Tuskegee. I know about Mrs. Lackey in Baltimore. I know about the other things that have occurred. I've worked in fields where I've seen disparate health treatment to people of African descent, particularly, because that's who I'm concerned about at this moment. I'm concerned about everybody, but put the mask on yourself first. So I wasn't going to take, I've never had a flu shot in my life. Wasn't going to take the vaccine. This is serious. I'm wearing a mask because I know that there's something wrong. I'm not walking out here without a mask. I wear gloves. And so the other day, I had an appointment to take the first of 2 shots. I canceled because I was still skeptical, and Bishop knows that I'm a traveler. I'm about to travel again, and I got the word that they weren't going to let me travel unless I had the vaccine. I got the Johnson & Johnson 1 shot. As I said, I'm like one of those women in Betty Davis or Joan Crawford. I want to live. So I took the 1 shot. And I've been fine. And so, but I tell people, I know about the skepticism because I was a skeptic based on historical data that impacts Americans of African descent, the health disparities, the challenges that Americans of African descent, and look at this. Many Americans of African descent can't even get in the portal to make an appointment. The other day I was told that when they put it online in DC, in 7 minutes, all the appointments had been made. 7 minutes.
Yeah,
and if you're American of African descent and you don't have a computer, you can't do nothing in 2 minutes. I don't care if they give you an hour. And so, it's discouraging. So we're working with the churches to try to get houses of worship where our people go, that they can go and get the shot in those areas and make provision for health, for faith communities to be vaccination sites. And so I'm not encouraging anyone to get the vaccine, but I am encouraging everyone to be wise in your own decision. You know your body, but I'm letting everybody know I got the 1 shot.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let me say, I think it's important that those people who do make the decision to get the shot, because I was a skeptic, let me say it first, and I've told my whole ELC leadership, and I told all of my aunts, because we have the same blood. I said, if y'all come out okay, then I think I'll be okay, because I felt like they weren't testing enough people of African descent as well. But anyway, I did get my first shot and I'm waiting on my second one. But I do think it is important for those people who do get it to take a picture, post it on social media. So those who are African American who are thinking about it and want to know how others are doing who have gotten the shot and whether they're going to make a decision to get it, then they'll see there are some people who don't have a twitch, ain't nothing happening with them. Their DNA hadn't changed. Their facial features have not changed, nothing strange is going on with them. Okay. So I think it's important for us to put those up and let people know there are people of African descent who are getting these shots that are okay and that are doing, well, even weeks later. I do want to say,
the funny part of that was, a while back when they first started giving the shots and they were talking about the negative aspects, and somebody sent me an emoji where the woman said, I just went and got my shot. And as she was saying it, her face was turning into a donkey, so, there are all kinds of things going on, but I've not changed. I'm still here. And I've not had any side effects other than, when you get a shot anyway, regardless of, we took all kinds of shots. We had to take shots to go to school. Come on now. You have to take shots when you go to certain countries, or you used to have to. I've taken shots to go out of the country.
Look, you still have to, as far as I know.
Yeah, so I'm, you know, look, I got my card.
Got your card with your name on it. And so if you haven't got your card, you want to get a card, make sure you go out and get the vaccine. I think it's the same way in Maryland, you know, where time you get on to make those appointments, they're already gone.
It's
And
happening
so
across the country.
yeah, hopefully that system will be overhauled. But I do want to say before we finally get off, this is our third close, Baptist close. Your
It is.
soror, my wife, Bishop Emeritus Dr. Williams, says hello and
Yeah,
that, you know, she loves you. And so, yeah, I had to say that because I saw her put it on the chat. And so thank you so much again. I think somebody from Clark, Atlanta, one of my sorors, is on, and she was shouting about Clark University. And
Clark
so,
Atlanta University, Clark Atlanta, CAU.
yeah, so she was shouting about that. And so thank you so much. You have blessed us on today, as always. And just know that we love you. And we're so glad of everything that God has allowed you to do. And we know that you're still doing great and marvelous things. And be safe in all that you do. I know you're going to travel. So be safe and, you know, traveling grace to you. And, you know, please do come back and give us our part 2. Because I mean, I tell you, we're gonna dig in for part 2. Okay. So I want to tell the people already, y'all get ready. We're gonna really dig in. All right.
God bless you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Bishop Diane, you know I love you, my sister.
And don't forget to tune in, everyone, on this coming Sunday. We have our virtual fellowship. The first time we tried to do this online. We're going to do it with the Beloved Community Church. And we have Dr. Sherry Moloch, who will be our guest preacher, and they are bringing their choir. They're bringing the choir virtually. So please remember to tune in with us. We're going to have a great virtual fellowship. And at some point, we're going to bring Dr. E. Gail on for a virtual fellowship now that we got this thing down. We understand how to do it. And so we're going to have that on Sunday. So please tune in at 11 a.m. We'll be on Facebook Live. We'll be on YouTube Live. We'll be on Roku. And as always, on ELC's website. So thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody. God's blessings to you. And remember to donate your tithes and offerings. This is Word Wednesday. I'm about to forget. And so go to Cash App at $ELC Church and make your offering there, as well as on Givelify to Empowerment Liberation Cathedral. And we do have some great events coming up. So check the website as well as the ELC Facebook site. Thank you so much. May God bless you. May God keep you. And may God continue